education budget, and we're releasing the Senate operating budget on Monday, and the capital budget a few days after that. We're not sure exactly what day yet, but next week as well. So I have all three budgets out, and we'll be past our policy bill cutoff, so really gearing up to tie things together for the end of session on April 26th. I said that very positively, didn't I? But who's counting? All right. So, you have some questions for me?
What can you tell us about the budget? Donna knows some of the details.
I think a lot has already been stated. The House and Senate have been working together on some of the bigger moving pieces, but there are very significant deep program cuts in what I would call the big four areas of our budget, which is, of course, K-12 schools, higher education, healthcare, and human services. Those are over $3 billion and are well over $3 billion in total in program level reductions, and significantly larger than the governor's proposed budget, because our deficit is just that much larger than the one the governor was facing when she wrote her budget.
Are there programs that go away completely or are just severely diminished?
On the Senate side, there'll be, minor programs that go away, but major social service safety net programs are not eliminated. We preserve the general assistance program, although there are reductions in it, and of course the basic health plan is a big priority for the Senate. We had hoped to make our reductions in the basic health plan less severe than the ones in the governor's budget, but given the additional economic bad news, we have not been able to achieve that at this point. So there are major reductions in the basic health plan as well.
How about adult day health? Were you able to preserve that?
Same thing. We do not eliminate the program, but it is reduced significantly for people who are already in other state programs. But we preserve adult day health services for people who are living in their homes. It's a really important protection that allows them to continue to live in their homes. So we are trying to keep that moving forward, but there is a major reduction there as well.
On higher ed tuition, Frank Jopp mentioned rather than doing the surcharge, maybe just lifting, giving the universities more tuition authority.
The Senate is talking about that. We have not moved yet off of the 7% tuition cap. However, we believe, as people see these major reductions in higher education and what it means for enrollments and making it harder to get into Western or the U, that we will probably revisit the tuition question before the end of session.
What are higher ed budget cuts looking like at this point?
Very significant, larger than the governor's. I think a total reduction in the whole, across the entire system, of almost $500 million.
What about enrollment figures?
Well, depending upon how the institutions handle some of those reductions, it guarantees enrollment reductions that are fairly significant. I'm not sure what the number is, but it would be in the thousands of enrollment reductions.
Senator Tom threw out 10,000 last week. Is that?
He's closer to it than I am, so I'll go with what he said.
He said that the surcharge was technically or legally a problem. Is that why you're not interested? Because the governor's argument was she could work it so that you would reimburse or be able to offset some of the hike with new federal programs. So there was a method to the madness.
It is true that there's more federal dollars coming in, both in terms of some Pell Grant and tax credits. However, when we did our higher ed analysis broken down by income group, with higher tuition, the students from lower income families can be covered because we adjust financial aid and because it's being adjusted at the federal level. Students from higher income families are not worse off because there are more tax credits available at the federal level and because they have higher family income. Students in the middle really get caught in this current structure in terms of how financial aid is awarded, and higher tuition hurts them particularly. We are open to going higher than 7%, and we're talking about it. The Senate remains really committed to preserving access, so we will have to figure out a way to preserve access. And that means for middle-class families as well as the lower-income students.
And just a quick follow-up on that. And it goes back to this, and actually to sort of defend my asking the question, when I talked briefly to Senator Castema yesterday, he very briefly expressed some disappointment that there haven't been bigger, bolder ideas coming out of this legislature this session. And the argument, I guess, has been that your bandwidth is taken up dealing with the budget crisis. But you have people like President Emmert saying, we could go to a whole new tuition pricing scheme that would be better for the middle class, would require higher income families to pay more. And why not do something like that rather than just work within the existing structures that even you say burden the middle class?
I believe what he's referring to is tuition by income level of families. And as far as I know, we'd be the only state in the country going to that model. I believe there are people who are open to it, but I think it's far from ready to launch. So at this point, we could launch an investigation of how it would work, but I don't see that we could wholesale convert our tuition system in the next biennium.
Cuts made in higher ed going to be more than the 18% scenarios that the four-year universities were asked to develop?
I believe they'll be close to that. You're referring to the letter that Senator Kilmer and Senator Tom sent to them? I think that went from worst case scenario to actual scenario.
What about state parks? The Parks Commission has a scary list of dozens of parks that they want to either get rid of or mothball. How likely is that to really happen?
Well, I think that it's already been reported. Representative Kessler is interested in a different fee arrangement where you can opt out. The Senate is also open to that. Senator Haugen has a bill that could be utilized for that. So we are looking at not doing as dramatic park closures and trying to come up with a way, probably this opt-out fee, to put some more money back into parks that would have otherwise been closed.
That wouldn't, I presume, save all the parks.
I'm not sure it would save all the parks. The other thing is we've had some tribes step forward and be interested in taking over some parks. And so there are a few places where we can do things differently and still maintain recreational access for people in Washington State. So we're looking at that. So it's not that we'll maintain every single park, but through this fee process, we will be able to keep many parks open.
Originally, your budget was going to be released today. Was there some sort of area of major disagreement with the House over a particular issue, or was it internal delays?
It took us longer than we thought. We're trying to line up on things outside the program area so that when you see the House budget and the Senate budget, you're roughly looking at apples to apples comparison. And we had some things that changed. We'd have preliminary agreements, and then something would change on one side or the other, and then you have to come back and talk about that again. And just getting this all together every 2 or 3 days slows the process down.
What's the main area of difference between the two?
At this point, I believe that the House and Senate are pretty close on the overall architecture of the budget. And we haven't shared with each other all the details of our program level cuts in K-12 higher ed, healthcare and human services. We've discussed some of the major pieces, but we haven't opened up the whole budgets to each other because we want to talk with our own members first.
Go back to parks just for a second. Are you guys using any capital for the wildlife WWRP funds or those bond monies that are used to buy land? Are you thinking about shifting those into just maintenance of existing parks rather than adding?
I don't believe we're doing that. However, we are moving some funds from the capital budget into the operating budget, as the governor did in her original budget.
That's the overall operating, not the
Mhm.
parks portion.
Not the parks portion.